Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. Can I welcome all the councillors, all the officers and members of the public present and those who are viewing on YouTube. My name is Amanda Rigby. I'm the chair of the committee. I'll now introduce the other members of the committee and ask them to confirm that they are indeed present. Councillor Sarah Bevan.
Present.
Thanks. I've had apologies from Councillor Sue Craig. Councillor Sally Davis.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Michael Evans.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Hedges.
Present.
Lovely. I've had apologies from Councillor Grant Johnson. Councillor Sarah Moore.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Roper.
Present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Karen Warrington.
Present.
Brilliant. And Councillor Ryan Wills. I can't see Ryan currently. He may be joining us later. Also present are officers Catherine Brown, who is the Team Manager for Licensing and Environmental Protection. John Dowding, who is our lead officer for licensing. He is with us, but unfortunately his webcam isn't working, so he's here audio only. Carrie-Anne Evans, Deputy Team Leader, Legal Services, and Mark Durnford, Democratic Services Officer. Could I remind all the councillors, officers and members of the public to keep background noise to a minimum, to only speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please mute your microphones when not speaking and then unmute when invited to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility by typing MIS, may I speak, and you'll be called to speak in turn. If a member of the committee has to leave the meeting, then please draw my attention to this by using the chat facility. When returning to the meeting, please also draw my attention to it the same way. Members should also inform me if they lose connection and miss any part of the meeting. I believe I see that Councillor Ryan Wills is with us. Councillor, could you just confirm that you are present for us?
Yeah, I'm present.
Thank you so much. Really good. Okay, let's moving on to the agenda. That's welcome and introductions. Item number 2 is election of vice chair if desired, and we don't require that today. Item number 3, apologies for absence and substitutions. I think we know those from the introduction, but Mr. Durnford, can you just confirm to us, please, any apologies or substitutions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Nothing further to add. I was aware of Councillor Johnson, but you've confirmed Councillor Craig as well. Thank you.
Yeah, she phoned. She made the effort to phone this morning, so yeah, she definitely got her apologies in. Right, item number 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? And if so, against what agenda item is it and what is the nature of that interest? I'll give a couple of minutes. No, people are shaking their head. I don't have a declaration of interest. I don't believe anyone else has. So I'm going to say there are no declarations of interest. If subsequent during the meeting you suddenly realise that in fact you feel you might have, please draw that to our attention. Item number 5 is to announce any urgent business agreed by the chair, and I haven't agreed any. Item number 6, items from the public, deputation statements, petitions or questions, and for this meeting we have none. Item number 7, minutes of the meeting of the 12th of October. I hope you've all had a chance to have a read of them. Can someone say if they believe that they are a true and correct record, and can someone else second that? Or this is the stage to say if you think there is anything incorrect in them.
Happy to propose them.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Can someone else second? Councillor Moore, I see your hand as well. So by show of hands, can we accept the minutes, please? That's unanimous. Thank you all very much indeed. So now on to the most substantive item today, item number 8, which is our response to the publication of statutory guidance on taxi and private hire vehicle standards by the Department of Transport. And I'm going to hand over to Kath Brown, who's going to lead off on this. Thanks, Kath.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. And as the Chair has said, I'm joined here today by my colleague John Dowding from the licensing team and Carrie-Anne Evans, our legal advisor. This statutory guidance was issued to local authorities last July. And it is one that we have been expecting for a while, it's fair to say. It stems from high-profile reports by Dame Louise Casey on the potential for the taxi trade to be used in the exploitation of vulnerable people, that's vulnerable adults and also children. And we very much welcome this statutory guidance because it makes sure that all local authorities and all licensing authorities across the country now have a very definitive blueprint, if you like, of how they should operate their licensing regimes to protect vulnerable people who may be using taxis, and indeed anybody who uses a taxi. It's also fair to say it helps protect the drivers as well. So we are expected to follow this guidance, it's statutory guidance, unless there are compelling reasons for us not to do so. And when it was initially published, the Department of Transport did say that within 6 months, the local authorities had to provide a public record of how they were responding to this guidance. They have relented a little bit because of the pandemic, and we have been required to submit a questionnaire back to them to say how we're progressing. But we very much felt that this was important to put on public record how we are responding to this guidance. And we've been through it, as you will have seen and read it for yourselves. It's quite weighty, it's quite thorough. We've been through it with colleagues from other council teams, so our children's services team, for example. And we've identified those areas where we're currently compliant, and happily there are quite a few of those. And then other areas where we need to do a little bit more work maybe, or where we need a bit more clarification on what DFT is expecting us to do. So in terms of the areas where we are compliant, we've got a very up-to-date licensing policy that was reviewed back in 2018 and has since been amended since then. We've already got very close links with Avon and Somerset Police. We also have a multi-agency safeguarding hub within the local authority for us to deal with any potential allegations regarding vulnerable children or adults. And this has become more prevalent in the last year. We now require all of our drivers to undergo awareness training around child sexual exploitation, and this is through an online course. And we've had really positive feedback from the drivers who have attended this course. They found it very worthwhile, and they've learnt a lot. So that's all working very well. The areas where we need to do a little bit work, which we've identified in Annex B to our report, are where we have to engage with this new national database of licensed drivers. So we're just going through the process for signing up to that database, which means that we will have information on drivers that may have been previously revoked or had licenses refused in other local authorities. So that's really positive. We need to look at the training that we provide you as the committee in light of this guidance to make sure that you are properly trained in all things that you need to know. We've got to do some work about how we do criminality checks for our drivers. We have something like 650 licensed drivers, and this guidance is putting a duty on us to do those checks every 6 months. So that's quite a task, and we're talking to our IT team about how we can automate that check, because as you can imagine, to do that manually would be quite an onerous task. And we're also looking at how we can have joint authorisations with other local authorities so that we can participate in operations that obviously cross local authority borders. So I think it is a positive picture, but we wanted to bring the report to the committee so that you could be reassured and also ask us any particular questions that you've got regarding this guidance. Our intention, Chair, is that once we've done a bit more work on the areas we need to focus on, that we will bring a report back probably around this time next year to give you an update of what we've done and how we've achieved it. So I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed, Kath. I see that, first of all, I have Steve Hedges and then second, Karen Warrington. So Steve and Karen, be standing by.
Right. Hi. Hello, Kath. I'm very impressed with the report, I have to say. A couple of things, though. As you will have understood, over the last few months, we've had some quite trying taxi sub meetings, which resulted in two operators losing their license. I'm not going to obviously name who they were, but it raises some issues, or raised some issues for me, and I think maybe for the other members of the committee. I noticed in the report it says about the DBS certificates. Do we make referrals of DBS on people that have lost their licenses so that they know the reasons why they've lost their licenses? So if they try to apply again, that's on a DBS check. That's my first question. I've got a couple more, so if I got an answer to that one first.
I'm going to ask John if he would mind answering that, because he will know the detail.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Steve. There's no provision to refer everyone automatically, as is mentioned in the safeguarding report here and guidance, that we will be referring people to the DBS if we revoke them, if there are concerns that they are a danger to children or vulnerable adults. But there isn't a blanket mechanism to just refer every revocation to the DBS, because quite often those revocations won't have achieved that threshold where they will fall into that safeguarding criteria. Yeah,
that's brilliant. My next, what you've already answered the one about information being shared with other councils, which is really good news. I also noticed in the report it says that the LGA has a councillor handbook on taxis and private vehicle hire licensing. Is it possible for the licensing committee to have a copy of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's available online, so I'll find the link for you and we can get it distributed to the members of the committee.
Lovely. And my most concerning thing is, and it's not actually to do with this, because the cases weren't to do with children of vulnerable people. Well, I suppose in a way it was. But when these people had their licenses revoked, if they choose to appeal, which I know one has, and with the COVID thing, it's quite possible that they can carry on driving for a full year or more. Now, that really concerns me, especially if it's someone who's putting people in danger, or someone who's a sex pest, or someone, or a child sex offender. Now, I think this council should be pushing that if it's a serious case, like at least one of the ones that we dealt with in the last 2 months, when you revoke a license, by law they shouldn't be allowed to drive, even if they are appealing, until they appeal. Otherwise, how many other people are going to be put in danger? I know our hands are tied at the moment, but is there any way that we can do something about this?
Can I make a suggestion before you answer, Kath? Because some of the other members of the full committee don't attend licensing subcommittees, I think it may be useful if Carrie-Anne were to say what the current legal position is about what our options are if a taxi driver comes in front of licensing, because that may help the discussion, and it will also help make it less personalised about any things that have happened in the past within Paynes, and be more general about how we'd like to see this bit. So Carrie-Anne, could we maybe do that bit first before I come to you, Kath? Does that make some sense? Carrie-Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in terms of revocation, if you as a committee decide that the driver before you is no longer fit and proper, you can immediately revoke, but that is preserved for the most serious cases of revocation. So it might be an incident of child sexual exploitation, or where someone has a medical condition which immediately renders them unsafe to be driving. Or alternatively, you have the option of revocation with notice. And that's what Councillor Hedges is talking about. So where you revoke with notice, if the driver submits an appeal to the magistrates court within the prescribed period, they are permitted to continue driving until their appeal is determined. Whilst I don't want to make it personal, I think it probably is useful to just say that in respect of those 2 revocations, they did appeal, but they both withdrew their appeals. So it would seem that they didn't see the merit in trying to pursue it. And also a positive, which I can relay, is those cases were listed before the court really quite quickly, as was the appeal hearings, which ended up being abandoned. So thankfully, we weren't in a position where we were looking at 6 months to a year of delay. It would have been dealt with very quickly. So hopefully that covers your queries, but let me know if there's anything else I can help with.
And maybe another little bit just to add to before I'll come back to you, Steve, I promise, but you're currently on mute, so I can carry on talking. Maybe just another little bit to add for the members of this committee who are not members of the licensing sub. The other issue that I would like to add to what Steve says about making sure that we've got the right powers to stop people who are really doing something quite dangerous from carrying on plying their trade with, well, not just vulnerable people, with anybody. It is that, and it's something that I welcome in the report, that we're joining the national database, so that we are sharing what we are doing, and increasingly other councils are sharing that, because until relatively recently, people could put an appeal in and then apply for a licence at another authority, get granted that licence and work perfectly legally in Baines. So the fact that we had revoked their licence had no immediate impact. So the more we're all sharing information, so that closes that loophole, the better. That's certainly my view. Anyway, Steve, it looks like you'd like, sorry, Steve, Councillor Hedges, it looks like you want to come back.
I did want to hear what Kath had to say about what we could do about it. So if we go to Kath first, and then I'll come back again.
I think Carrie Ann's answered the question, to be fair. I mean, as you say, we do have powers where we feel that there is an imminent risk of somebody not being fit and proper, that we can take action to revoke their licence, and that is action that we have taken. So we are not afraid to do that if the circumstances are fit and appropriate for that to happen. John, is there anything else that you would like to add to help Councillor Hedges here?
I was going to say, just to clarify, I think Carrie Ann explained it, but the thing is, the licensing subcommittee deals with a whole range of taxi driver issues, from some which could lead to a revocation, such as a number of complaints about low-level behaviour that are received over a period of time, which then eventually stack up and render that person not fit and proper in the eyes of the council. And in those cases, as Councillor Hedges points out, then those sort of level of revocations will be able to drive whilst that appeal procedure is determined by the courts, because those people are deemed to be, whilst to be undesirable to the council and not fit and proper, they don't actually impose an immediate risk to the travelling public. What the legislation actually allows, through amendments that were brought in some years ago, is for a further option that Carrie Ann explained. In the case of where a council feels that a driver is an immediate danger to the travelling public, we can then revoke under the same provisions as not fit and proper. However, the legislation then prohibits that person from driving further, even though they've lodged an appeal. And we have used that provision. It's called Section 2B, and we have used that provision on a number of occasions in the licensing subcommittee to prevent what Councillor Hedges is concerned about.
Okay, and my last thing, Chair, is, thank you for that, by the way. And my last thing is that in 8.13 of the report, it says that taxi drivers are supposed to keep records. Basically, there's quite a list of things they have to keep. If you know who's driving the car, who the passenger is, where they're going, where they're getting dropped off, who provided the car, all that sort of thing. Do we make our drivers do that?
If I can answer that one. Yeah, we already have in fact, we already have all those provisions built into our operators conditions. So private hire operators are already required to record all of that information on that list, apart from the 2 additions that suggest that the council should then also require them to record the name of the person who actually took the call and then the name of the person who dispatched the vehicle, which we don't require at the moment, and we do cover that in Annex C of the report.
Right, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Warrington.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to take you back to the revocation because on page 58 or 59 of the PDF, it's clause 4.12 to 4.13. It does actually say that the licence may be suspended. So is there then the power, if a serious allegation comes to the team, are they able to suspend that driver pending an investigation before it goes to the subcommittee? Is my first question. So just a little bit more clarification on that. And then I just wanted to also look slightly further up on that clause where it says if a licensee is being accused of criminal activity, they and is the subject of an active police investigation, they should inform. Is that the police should inform or the licensee? Just a little clarification around those 2. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. The first, sorry, okay, if I deal with the second one, the police would inform us under the notifiable, the common law disclosure, but we also have it built into our conditions that all licensees, if they're subject to a criminal investigation, have to report that to us within a specified time frame. Sorry, could you remind me of your first point again? I got sidetracked with that one.
It was just the suspension of the licence.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
What potentially is the difference, or whether it can be done immediately?
Yeah, no. As the report does state, it's not a definitive guide to the law, unfortunately. And there was a very binding court case, which Carrie-Anne's aware of, called the Singh judgment, which came out about approximately 4 or 5 years ago, I think now, and basically has ruled that suspensions cannot be used as an interim measure. So, for instance, if we've got concerns about a driver, as you just pointed out, we cannot actually suspend them while we investigate with then a view to possible revocation later on. A suspension should be used as a one-off thing to deal with something that can be fixed. So, for instance, if someone's got a medical condition or something like that, or would require further training, you could use a suspension to say, right, you are suspended until you've completed this training, and then we will judge that you are again fit and proper. With an investigation of activities of a driver that may lead to potential revocation, we no longer have the provision to say, right, we're suspending you whilst we investigate. We have to either take the option, and unfortunately we have taken that option on a number of occasions with drivers who've been subject to some very serious allegations, where we've just said, well, unfortunately we've got no option but to revoke with immediate effect.
Thank you.
Does that answer your questions? Excellent. I've got there's no one else in the chat. I've got more of a comment really than a question, though there may be a bit of a question in it. And thank you for the dog joining our committee meeting, Councillor Hedges. It always makes us happy. First of all, if anyone is watching this on YouTube, I would hate for them to run away with the thought that we have a large cohort of taxi drivers against whom we have to take action all the time. That is absolutely not the case. Our taxi driver community within Baines largely sticks by the rules, and in fact largely goes above and beyond in terms of helping and trying to be the best ambassadors for the area, as well as being generally very fit and proper to ply their trade. So I thought it was quite important to make that point. Also, again, just for general use, revocation is, as it has to be really, the sort of the nuclear option endpoint, where we think that nothing else can serve, because there may have been already written warnings or there may have been points added, because in effect we are we are preventing someone from earning their income in the way that they have chosen to earn their income. So that isn't a step that we take in any way lightly. However, our first and main and really only priority is public protection. So we have to decide whether or not someone is fit and proper to keep acting as a taxi driver. And as such, we have shown that we are prepared to do so and move to revocation if we believe that person isn't fit and proper. So I think the system works well to the point that it gets a subcommittee. I think after then is the time where I would agree with Councillor Hedges. It would be nice to have further ways of making sure that the decision that's made at subcommittee, if it's appealed, gets appealed quickly, so there's not a long delay when people can still carry on driving, and also that information is shared more widely. So if they go the route of just applying for a licence at another authority, it flags up that in fact their licence has been revoked in Baines. So I think what we've got in front of us as a paper is moving us forward. I would say this, wouldn't I, because I'm very proud of our Baines licensing team on this. I think we didn't have that far to move. I think there are other authorities for whom this has had to be quite a bigger step. We were already quite a way along the way of doing this, and we do still have a few bits to do. So as Kath said, once they're done, to come back and properly adopt this next year, COVID dependent, I think is a really good idea. But I think we should actually be quite proud of what we've done so far, both in terms of our own team and actually in terms of our own taxi driver community.
Thank you, Amanda.
Pleasure, it's true. Has anyone else got anything else they either wish to say or question? No. So looking at our papers, what we're being asked to do is to consider the proposals in respect of any action to be taken and to approve the proposed action. Could I see someone to move that we so do, please? Councillor Hedges, I saw your hand first, and Councillor Warrington, seeing as how your hand's up, I suspect you're willing to second. So that has been moved and seconded. By show of hands, can I see that we all approve that, please? Excellent, thank you very much. That is therefore passed. And that brings this committee to an end. Can I thank you all again very, very much for your time and for your contributions. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you.
Okay.